Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We've got Ghost Gambles and Brandie Bets, episode 2. And so as we're getting into it, first off, Brandie, how are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, can't complain besides what happened to my team over the weekend. We don't have to talk about that, but besides that, I'm doing great.
We've got plenty of other post-game shows and stuff that we can bring you on and talk about that. There's no reason for that. We don't have to do that. We're here to talk about other
Perfect.
things. And
Perfect. So, and I'm doing great.
Good, yes. If I sound different, I apologize. I feel like I have a very high-pitched, stuffy sound coming out of my body. So for you watching, I appreciate you. Please stay with me. I'm going to do my best. Brandie may have to carry us, sort of like she did in week 1, where I went 1-4. Brandie, you went 2-2. I'll kind of let you talk about your 4 plays first, how they played out. You can skip the Tennessee game if you want to. Because I saw how that one played out, and it hurt a little bit. But just kidding. Overall, what do you think about your slate in the end after watching everything play out?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like out of the 4, so I went 2-2, and I really feel like I had a good grasp on 3 of those 4 games, not really like 2 of the 4, how the record shows. So total miss on App State and Clemson game. I think Clemson actually is better than what I initially thought. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how they do the rest of the year in the ACC, because I think it's either them or Miami right now, kind of at the top of that conference. So besides that one, though, Iowa -2.5 was my other loss, and I still would go back and pick Iowa -2.5 again if I was asked to pick on that game again. They were up. They had a 13-point lead and blew it. It's the worst blown lead that they've had, and I think since like 2008 or something like that, something
Ouch.
crazy. So, yeah, that one was not great, but I still don't think it was a bad look by any means. They just let Iowa State come and take the game out of their hands, really. So, that one was more to me like on coaching than anything else. So, little disappointed in Iowa there. Oregon, Boise State. Boise State covered that double-digit spread with ease. Ashton Ginty is the best running back in the country and did exactly what I said he would do in that game. So that was a late-night game, and that one felt so great. And I think Ashton has a real shot at making it to New York City. Do I think he's going to win? Maybe not, but I stand by the fact that I think he's the best running back in the country, and he deserves a spot in New York. And now talking heads since that Oregon game are starting to talk about him. And I think Boise State, if they can win out, could be poised to have that G5 spot in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's how things ended up shaking out. And then my other play is the one that me and Ghost went head to head on. So Tennessee, I got it early at -7.5, and I said I would take it up to -9.5. I should have said I would have taken it up to like -21.5.
Alternate lines, the works.
Yeah, Nico's legit. I don't really think there's anything else other to say. Like he's great, and Tennessee actually has a pretty decent defense. Yeah, their secondary wasn't as bad as like I thought that they were. I don't know if that's more of a conversation about NC State's offense though, but I love Tennessee's defensive line. I think they had a phenomenal game, and their secondary performed to me better than I expected. And I'm not really sure right now who's going to be able to stop outside of Georgia. Who's going to be able to stop Nico? I don't know. It's tough. I think they have a solid receiving core, and he's the real deal, and he reads the field really, really well. So Tennessee's going to be a super fun team to watch, I think, throughout the rest of the season.
No, I agree with you. That obviously I'll address that one first. Great call on your part. You could have bet that to a lot of different numbers and been fine. As soon as Grayson McCall threw the bad pick six, halfway through the second quarter to maybe 2/3 of the way, that was a wrap. They were about to get back in the game a little bit, And at that point, I was like, I felt like we were holding on for dear life as an NC State backer at that point. And I was like, it's going to be really, really, really hard to cover unless they score 7 here. And Tennessee scored 7, 2 or 3 plays later. And Nico's awesome. He didn't have to, he was a lot better in week 1. Obviously, he's playing a better defense in week 2. He didn't have to do much. Like, they're pretty dang good. Like, they're loaded. They really are good. Running game's good. Defense is good. Defensive line was great. But maybe at the same time, it's a little bit of North Carolina State being bad. I'm only saying that because of the Western Carolina game, and then I decided to back them plus 10, and they get curb stopped. So North Carolina State was a terrible pick on my part. Call it how it is. And now we'll move on to my next terrible pick is Texas Tech. I am sorry. I apologize with my full heart. I am not falling for that shit again. I will never back the Texters out of Lubbock ever. It's not happening. That was embarrassing. You let Washington State's quarterback Mateer. He did everything he wanted with his legs. Never did anything with his arm. Y'all had plenty of opportunities to get in there. We got to get the chat going. There we go. Thank you for checking in, Brother Bryce. But you did everything that you could, or Washington State did, to let y'all like stay in that game. Offensively, you couldn't get it done. Your defense kind of held it together for how many mishaps you have. We fumbled the opening kickoff. That's rough. Plus 1.5. You're kind of excited. I needed that game at the end of my night to kind of get us back in shape after a rough day. And they laid an egg. So I apologize on Texas Tech. That and North Carolina State were both bad plays. Call it how it is. Now, I do have 2 more losses. I went 1-4. That's pretty humbling to say out loud. But 1-4, the Buffalo game, it stings. I'm going to be honest with you. Brandie and I were talking a little bit during this game. Buffalo never scored, but still has a great shot to cover in the end with the ball with 90 seconds left in the game, down by 31. And they go 3 and out and have to punt. Now, Coach Drinkowitz and Missouri are a little bit on my shit list after this one because they decided to throw 2 passes in the last minute of that game and then run a play from inside the 10-yard line with less than 30 seconds left on the clock to go ahead and to get the cover for Missouri. Good stuff. Y'all win 38-0. You beat up on poor Buffalo in the last minute. I did not expect that. I thought we'd run 3 or 4 plays and call that one a game. And so Buffalo hurt. I will be honest. That one hurt a lot. That was
a good call still. I think that one was a good call still.
Missouri's struggling on offense right now. I'm still, like you said, with Iowa, which, by the way, that play, I was also on Iowa because of you, of course. That was robbery. They've got to convert those red zone trips in the first half into touchdowns, and that game is over and over quick. I think they could have kind of broke Iowa State. And that last drive, I mean, that was painful to watch. I know it was only a 2-point game at that point, but that was hard. The Iowa loss, that's a bad loss. Buffalo, it's not as bad in my opinion, but that one does hurt. I had Nevada plus 1.5 against Georgia Southern. I think we're down 3 or 4, and we have 3 straight trips inside the last 8 or 9 minutes in that game. Just need to go tie the game up, go win the game on any of them. They failed to do so. Offense struggled. So it is what it is. Nevada easily could have got there. Buffalo very, very easily could have got there. But then I did have 2 egregiously bad picks on there. North Carolina State and then Texas Tech, who will never be bad again. At the same time, I'm, complaining about 2 games when the only win I had on my sheet, it took overtime to get there. I had the over in Oklahoma State and Arkansas. It was a wild game, obviously. Kind of insane that Arkansas lost that one, in my opinion. But, yeah, so it took overtime. We did get there. But most importantly, this is over. We've now addressed it, and it's time to move on from it all. I will say, like Brandie mentioned, Ashton Jeanty is a fantastic watch, must-watch TV. If you have a chance to watch Boise State at any point during the season, do so strictly for that guy because he's incredible. He's talking about over 460 yards through 2 weeks.
Yeah, he had 3 touchdowns against Oregon.
Yeah, so 9 touchdowns in 2 weeks. And, I mean, Georgia Southern's not a slouch. Sorry, there's a lot worse opening week opponents out there. So, yeah, very impressive numbers for Ashton Jeanty. Tennessee looks really good. The Iowa game, I really like your card looking back at it. Obviously we both misread the App State game a little bit. Didn't expect Clemson to actually throw the ball downfield to their wide receivers. It was really weird to watch that. But at the same time, they looked really dominant. So overall, obviously Brandie had the better card, but it's a new week and we're here to get back on it. Brandie,
Hopefully we have no head-to-head That's this week.
We don't have any. We each have 5 plays for you. I have 6 or 7, and since we talked last, I have traded out one of my 5. We can talk about that later. But go ahead if you would give us the first pick on your sheet, and kind of your thoughts on that game.
Yeah, I'll start off with the game that is tomorrow, and that is Texas State plus 1.5 at home against Arizona State. So I love this play mainly because of Texas State having home field advantage and because of Jordan McLeod being the quarterback for Texas State. Jordan McLeod was JMU's quarterback last year and did really well there, and he ended up transferring to Texas State this offseason, and he's just a true passing threat. And even though Arizona State's 2-0, good start to the season. Yep. Love their head coach and Kenny Dillingham, young guy. He used to be offensive coordinator at Auburn at one point, actually. Mississippi State was still able to pass the ball against Arizona State this weekend. Their defense wasn't anything that was like alarming. That I was like, oh my gosh, they're really locking them down. No, like Mississippi State was able to move the ball against Arizona State. Like, yeah, they lost and didn't cover, but also another team that was able to not really move the ball against them, but not actually move. Another team that they played besides Mississippi State is Wyoming, which is like one of the worst offenses in FBS right now. And yes, they killed them. So I don't really think their first 2 games and then being 2-0, like overreacting to anything that Arizona State has going on. Also with their offense, like they are averaging like 39 points per game or something like that. It's a little misleading because there's a defensive touchdown that they got against Mississippi State. So they're also, Arizona State's also hasn't hit a regression yet. I know it's only week 3, but they're one of 21 teams in the country who have not had a turnover this season, and they're perfect on 4th down conversions this year. So all that to say, when I say that, you're like, oh, why are you not betting Arizona State? Well, this game is at Texas State. They do show up for home games. It's a short week, and that game was pretty late at night on Saturday for them against Mississippi State at home. And I just think that I don't know if I'm saying his last name right, but that's the head coach for Texas State. He's one of the best lower level head coaches right now in college football, and I think he just really knows what he's doing, and I think they have the better quarterback, and as long as they can win the turnover game, I think that they have a great shot to win this game. So I'm taking them plus 1.5. And yeah, I think that they're going to get us started on a good note on Thursday.
Let me very happily jump on that one and say that is my favorite play that you sent me this week. I know we talked about it a little bit before you shared our plays. I would have had that on my sheet too. I'm going to let you have it because I'm going to bet it too. And so I think it's a fantastic play. Cam Scadaboo just absolutely ran through the Mississippi State defense last week. He had 33 carries. You're talking about a short week. You're traveling, and Texas State's damn good. They just absolutely pile drove UTSA, who's also struggling a little bit at the moment. But that game was a 2.5, 3-point spread, depending on where you looked. And Texas State just absolutely buried them. It's G.J. Kinney, and so Kenny is a very hot commodity in the coaching world right now, and everybody knows he's potentially has his eye on a few jobs here in state. And so I don't think he's like out talking to other teams. I think he's like worried about Texas State and getting things done. In my opinion, he knows where he wants to go eventually when he leaves his school. That's a whole other conversation. But point is, I think Texas State beats Arizona State. Absolutely. I think it's a fantastic matchup for Jordan McLeod. The secondary last week in the second half, Arizona State looked pretty suspect, to be honest. Chapin had, they scored a lot in the second half. I don't remember what it was. I know that Mississippi State was in a lot of trouble there.
Yeah, they were throwing the ball around at halftime or after halftime. Mississippi State was.
It was like a 23-point game or something. I don't remember what it was. It's late in the night, and I was watching Tech, unfortunately. But so I'm a huge fan. I like Texas State plus 1.5. Reminder, as Brandie said, that game is tomorrow night, just 10 miles up the road from me. I might get up there, and we'll see what happens. Depends on how I'm feeling, to be honest. But I want to go watch Coach Kenny and Texas State's team. Like, it's in a crazy atmosphere right now. The students are all behind them. Shout out Barstool, Texas State. He's always in here watching. I have a lot of positive vibes about that program right now. And then you tie that in with a short week, a ton of carries for the big guy, the Hoss, Cam Scadaboo out of Arizona State. And I don't think that they score enough. And Texas State won't let them be, they're going to make them be one-dimensional with the passing game. I think they take away the running game the best that they can. How many carries do you turn around and give that guy on a short week after he's had 60 plus carry or 55 plus carries in the first 2 weeks? So we'll see. I do like Texas State a lot.
Yeah, Texas State has more than just a passing game too. Their running back is pretty decent. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I would definitely butcher that, but it's like Maddie. Yeah. He's actually pretty decent too. So I think that they have a little bit of a ground threat too that they can pose in that game. So
yeah, I think Texas State controls that game, wins that game. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I don't think we'll see Arizona State getting up like they did against Wyoming or Mississippi State is my point. They're playing a much better, more sound Texas State team. It's very early in Coach Levy's tenure at Mississippi State. Obviously, that team probably looks a lot different by season's end. They looked a lot different in the second half, but that first half was rough, and they kind of ganged up on Wyoming the week before in the same way. This will be a dogfight for 4 quarters, in my opinion. Yeah, so I like Texas State. Great pick. My first pick on my card is I'm bringing up Texas Tech again, but we're damn sure not betting Texas Tech. We are taking the over Texas Tech and North Texas, over 68.5 right now. Who is Tech going to stop this year? They look so bad at linebacker and on the defensive line. No negative plays, no pass rush. North Texas and Chandler Morris have been slinging it around. Obviously, Latrell has gone into Oklahoma now, but a lot of the same scheme is still around at North Texas. They're going to throw the ball, air raid it out. They're going to score points on Texas Tech. Now, Texas Tech last week, I mentioned their offense was set up to score a lot of points. They didn't really get that done. I think you'll see a better ground game out of Texas Tech. The offensive line is playing good. I think you could see 75, 80 points. I really do. I wouldn't be surprised to see a 45-35 type game at all. I am very confident about North Texas scoring some points. Texas Tech has injuries everywhere right now on defense. And so I'm banking on an good old-fashioned Texas shootout in that one because Abilene Christian put up 51 on Tech. Washington State scored mid-30s last week. Tech's offense will play a little bit better against the defense at North Texas. It doesn't have the horses potentially to keep up with the Tech offense for 4 quarters. So, you have any thoughts on that, Brandie? You gonna fade? You can fade.
No, I don't have any thoughts other than what's the team total for North Texas for that game, because you may have just sold me on that one with everything that you just said.
Well, that's a great question. I need to look at that. And I honestly should have done that because a spread that's 9 points. You have a 68.5 point total on that. So you're thinking somewhere, I mean, it's got to be 29, 30 and a half, something in there.
Something around there. Yeah. Now I'm thinking about that. So after we hop off here, I might look at playing a team total on that game.
I like that. It. And speaking of team totals, why don't you tell us about your second pick you have?
Yeah. The second pick that I have is on Memphis and Florida State. So while I would love to just play Memphis money line plus 6.5 outright, Florida State is coming off of a bye week. They're more rested, and I don't want to quite overreact to the horrible start that they've had so far. So right. Pivoting on that game because I do want some action on it because I will be tuned in. And I'm taking Memphis team total over 22.5 points. Memphis actually has a pretty decent offense this year. Seth Hennigan has some experience under him now, and he has a 70% completion rate so far through 2 weeks. And I just have been really impressed with Memphis and their offense, and it's a little bit of a fade on Florida State's defense. We heard a lot this offseason about how good their defensive line was supposed to be. Nobody really talked about how their secondary was going to look. Both are bad. Like, Boston College ran the ball down their throats. And so I think Memphis will go into this game with an understanding that they can pass this ball on Florida State. Every team has been able to pass the ball on them, but they also have the ability to run the ball down their throat if they really need to. And so I think Memphis is going into this game with eyes wide open. Florida State's given up 24 and 28 points in both their games this season, and their third down execution is really bad. So if Memphis gets in a situation where they have to convert on third down, like if I would live bet that, I would live bet them to get a first down a lot. Like I just am very, very low on this Florida State defense. And I don't know if coming off of a bye week and coming off of rest is going to be enough to stop Seth Hennigan and Mario Anderson on Memphis offense. So they also have a pretty nice receiver in Rock Taylor in their wide receiver room too. So I think that Memphis, I would love to bet them plus 6.5 and money line. I just don't know. I don't know if that's going to be fully in the cards for them. So I'm pivoting a little bit to their team total here. And I like Memphis to get out of this scoring over 22.5, probably going to score around 24. Wouldn't be surprised if they get out of there in 28-30 range either.
I like it. Got a question like Florida State. I know that, their last 3 football games have just looked so bad. Going back to last year against Georgia, obviously, and that wasn't their full team. I get all that, but their opener this year, the second game with Boston College, I mean, fading Florida State in some manner seems just like the smart thing to do. You know what I mean? Whether it's points, money line, I like the team total. Much safer play. Memphis is really good at scheming openings, drives, really whole first quarter. So, I mean, you get an early touchdown. Just kind of see what Florida State's made of. I feel like, you're being 0-2. That offense hasn't helped that defense out whatsoever. I'm not questioning the will of Florida State, but I'm curious to see how much fight they have after looking really, really bad. You would expect them to fight, but I'm curious. I like to play. Like you said, it's very, very tempting to take Memphis in the 6.5, even money line. But the bye week is what scares me. So I kind of stayed away from that. Yeah, strictly from the bye week. You know that Norvell's a good coach. There's going to be a lot of attention and motivation for this one. So overall, though, I like to play. I should have done the same with North Texas. Still can. But
I do think, too, with how poor DJ has played and just their offense in general, like Memphis should get some good field position, too, in this game, which should help.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that was kind of like with Texas last week. I liked the team total. I liked the Texas spread. And it was just strictly because the Michigan offense looks so bad. You're going to lose field position battles. You're going to turn the ball over. And that's the thing. If Memphis wins a turnover battle, they probably cash that number easy, Right. Florida State doesn't have the ground game, and they give up too much on the ground. So long way of saying good pick. My second choice on my card is South Carolina plus 7.5. It's been a very popular play. A lot of people have bet that line down from 10 or 11 when it first came out Sunday. Mm-hmm. And so I hate to be trendy and follow the crowd. I really don't. But at the same time, there's a ton of money on the LSU money line for this game. So I feel like the spread bets, the money line bets, we balance each other out. So I'm not exactly all with the crowd. But I just have questions about the LSU offensive line, the LSU run game. I think South Carolina's going to be very, very aggressive with their defense. They're going to try to get to Nussmeier, force Nussmeier to beat them over the top. And hey, Kentucky looked awful, okay? That needs to be said before we say anything else about that game. But at the same time, there are 2 teams on the field, and you have to give one team a little bit of credit. I mean, one team was awful because another team was there too, and they aid in that effort. South Carolina's defense looked really, really good against a really, really bad Kentucky offense. But I was surprised by their offense moving the football a little bit against what I thought would be a pretty good defense for Kentucky. Now, it's one of those games that's kind of skewed. They scored 31 points. They had a defensive touchdown. But all in all, I think the game being in Columbia, a massive atmosphere for the Gamecocks. I'm going to trust the home crowd, Lenore Sellers, to play turnover-free football. And I think they potentially can win that game, but definitely cover that game because of their defense. I think defense are going to be aggressive. They'll probably find a turnover or 2. I'm hoping they find a turnover or 2. I'm riding with Gamecocks plus 7.5. Any thoughts on that one, co-host?
Honestly, I really don't have a great read on this game, so I'm going to trust you on that one. I, hand up, in our Pick'em League was a victim of overreaction to Kentucky week 1 and South Carolina week 1 and picked Kentucky minus 10.5 or minus 9.5, whatever it ended up closing at in our Pick'em League, which obviously did not happen at all. And I thought, South Carolina looked really bad in their week 1 game, and I don't know. I don't know. I have no read on South Carolina still. And so but I do know LSU, their rush defense is not great. And they did not, obviously week 1 didn't look great against USC and honestly didn't really look that impressive against Nicholls State either. So I like it being with, at South Carolina. Game day is going to be there. Love a home underdog, especially over a touchdown there. Yep. I can get with it. I like it. I could see this one being a 1 possession game going into, the last 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, the LSU rush defense hasn't been good. There's going to be a ton of hype for this game for South Carolina. It's just a little bit too big of a spread, in my opinion. I know it started off even larger, but you referenced the pick 'em before we get back to our picks. How did you do? Do you have your overall record for last week? I'm trying to look at it right here.
Let me see what it was last week.
Let me see here. Another good week. We have 56 competitors, and Brandie is tied for second overall, I believe.
Yeah, my win-loss record on the season so far is 30-20. And just for like transparency, everything that I give out here, I pick the same thing in our Pick'em League. And even the stuff on the side that we don't actually give out, like last week I mentioned Tulane plus 9.5, which that hit. I mentioned Arkansas plus 7.5, that missed. That I still picked those in our Pick'em League too.
There we go.
Let's see what the weekly performance looked like. I think I went I went 15 and 10.
15 and 10.
Both weeks. Both weeks have gone 15 and 10.
That is consistency. And in the sports betting world, that's what we beg for. That's solid.
Right.
Like I said, 56 competitors. Brandie is tied for second. Just a couple games. A single game out of first at the moment. So kudos to her. I myself had a miserable week 1 with an 8-17 performance. Followed that up last week with a 14-11 performance. I think I lost like the last 3 or 4 games of the day. So I was like really kind of thinking, I was like, man, we could have the top week. We're going to get back in this, which we did get back in it. We hopped up from 53rd to 22nd. So there we go. Some love. Blind telling. She does know best. There's a reason she's here, and she knows her ball. I mean, 30-20 is solid. That's hard to argue. If the Iowa game probably, goes your way, a couple other ones, very easily could have had a little bit better of a week. So
and I think the one that hurt the most for me in the Pick'em League, it wasn't even Iowa or Arkansas. It was Cincinnati. I had Cincinnati minus 2.5. And if anybody watched Cincinnati and Pitt, Cincinnati gave up 22 points to Pitt unanswered to lose the game outright. Yeah, that one really hurt. Out of all of the games that I picked, not the ones that I was like totally off on, or even Iowa that I gave out here, but that one to me hurt the worst. I was like, this is going to be fine. And then kind of gave me a little bit of hope at the very end. And somehow Pitt went and drove down and made a field goal to win the game.
I was on the other side of that. When that score was early in the game, I was like, gosh, you're dumb. You really took Pitt here in this spot. But yeah, it was a wild day in the pick'em. It always is. At one point I think I texted you and you and I were both like 6-1 or 6-2. And I was just like, okay, we're about to crush it today. And then
good.
Vegas happens. They know what they're doing, and there was a little bit of heartbreak in there. But overall, we had 2 of the better weeks, and both in the top 5 of overall performance, or at least for picks correct. So, we'll take it. 30-20 is very, very solid. Kudos to you for that. But let's go to your third pick. So,
yeah, similar to you, I am also picking an SEC team that is a home underdog this week, and that's Florida plus 4.5. So I know any Texas fans that are listening will love to hear that, because Texas A&M is playing at Florida this weekend. This game kind of reminded me a lot of a game last year that I was on the right side of on a Florida game, and that was Tennessee at Florida. And there's some stat out there last year that Tennessee hadn't won in the Swamp since like 2017 or something, and very clearly on paper and everywhere else, like Tennessee should have, like, that's a game that you would think, okay, Tennessee's going to win, no problem. Well, they didn't. Florida beat them. Texas A&M hasn't won a true road game since October 2021 when they played on the road at Missouri. And we all know first-year head coach this year, but also on the other side, Billy Napier's on the hot seat. Kind of a little bit of quarterback controversy now in Florida. If Mertz, I don't know if he did today or not. If he's past concussion protocol, he's probably going to be starting. That's what Napier said. But Lagway looked really, really good in their game against, well, not really, really good, but he looked good in their game against Samford this past weekend, which Samford isn't really good. But I'm just not sure if Texas A&M has what it takes to overcome what's needed to win on the road in the Swamp. I think points are going to be a premium in this game. And so I love taking the underdog when I feel like points are going to be a premium. Connor Weigman, just like he wasn't very impressive and hasn't been. There's just nothing to me that is impressive about this Texas A&M team yet. And there's still nothing that's really impressive about this Florida team, but I'm taking a team at home in the Swamp against a team that's also not very impressive every day of the week. So give me those points. And Billy Napier is trying to save his coaching job right now, and I think he's going to coach his ass off in this game because of that. And yeah, I don't know. I just can't get behind this Texas A&M team. They lost to Notre Dame like pretty handedly, who then just lost to Northern Illinois this weekend, so at home. And so I don't know what to make of this team, but I don't think that they're very good. I don't think that Florida is very good. And when two teams that I don't think are very good are playing each other, and the team who is at home is the one that's an underdog, I'm going to take those. I'm going to get the free points that they're giving us.
No, I mean, obviously I like that. I'm never going to be rooting for the Aggies in any game, whether I took them or not. So any chance I have to put money on the other side and root a little bit harder against those guys, I'm happy to do so. But I think you made great points. It's, to me, a lot of it comes down to the quarterback situation for Florida. The last I heard with the 3 to 4 hours ago is that they're not going to name a starter until game time. I don't know if there's much credence to that or not.
I think because he hasn't officially passed concussion protocol, maybe. Yeah. So Napier said that it just all depends on if he passes or not, and he will be the starter if he does. But okay. I think they're probably keeping that close to the chest as a game plan type of thing. So I don't know if he'll pass it or not, though. So I don't know. I hope he doesn't, because I think Lagway's better. But
right,
as bad as that sounds,
I can't imagine what the pulse of that fan base is over there. Just I really, really, really feel like they're all like, "Why is this even a question right now?" Because you're trying to, like you said, you're coaching for your job over there in Gainesville. DJ looked good last week. Texas A&M's defense hasn't allowed a pass of over 20 yards this season. Now they played Notre Dame and they played McNeese State. Elko, when he was at A&M, kind of his only little bugaboo on his really good defenses he's had is if you were a team that was elite attacking deep, and now I'm bringing up two of the best college offenses of all time, so I'm not comparing them to DJ Lagway when I talk about 2019 lighting up a Mike Elko defense over the top, throwing to wide open guys. And then you have 2020 Alabama doing the same thing. Shout out Coach Sark. But my point is that DJ Lagway completed 9 passes of over 20 yards last week. And so I just, at some point he had, in my opinion, if, Mert struggles, we'll see DJ try to take the top off of that Aggie defense. I just don't know if, like you said, if A&M can score enough. I'm not super impressed with the offense. You're going to the Swamp. I like your play. It's a lot of points for an A&M team, in my opinion, but cool. I don't know if they should be giving up anything to anyone, but I will say this: Did you see the Northern Illinois head coach? His name's escaping me, but how he went to Marcus Freeman, and he was on a podcast today, and he went to Marcus Freeman post game and offered to help them out later in the season by sharing, what they saw on film and what they saw, what they knew that they could expose. And I'm like, man, what a great guy. And then I'm putting myself in Marcus Freeman's shoes, and I would be mad as hell if I just lost to Northern Illinois and their coach was like, bro, do you want me to show you the film of where we got your ass at? Because I can show you real quick. And I'm
he's trying to vie for a spot on Freeman's staff or something.
Hey, that's good thinking right there,
I know. That's a good career move. I like it. That's awesome. I mean, that to me was the biggest upset this weekend. Definitely no other crazy upsets that happened.
I didn't even watch any of it until like the last 3.5 minutes, and that was because I was watching other games. I never even looked at the score. Never saw anyone tweet about it. And then at some point I'm scrolling through and I was like, wait, Northern Illinois has the ball. And yeah, this is insane. They have a chance to go win it. But hello, Mr. Goldstein. He told me today on Nationals over 3.5 team total cash in the 5th inning. Thank you for your support, Matt. Take the Mississippi State 11.5. Ouch, buddy. I mean, I wanted y'all to win so bad last week, Lounge, and I never thought it would be like a real thing. I'm not calling it SEC pride, but like I wanted y'all to take down the Big 12 school. I don't love the Big 12 anymore, and I don't want to hear it from them. So I was on your side, Lounge, definitely rooting hard for you guys. But so Florida plus 4.5 as Brandie's third play. We'll go to my third play. This is one that I know Brandie's probably going to fade in the pick'em, but I'm going Kansas State and the 7 points. I'm giving up the 7. I I'm gonna be very honest. This is as ratty as a line as I have ever seen. So far this year, this makes no sense. Kansas State secondary has looked terrible. Very physical game with Tulane last week. That was a scrap. That was a fight. Like that, both teams were very physical. But very honestly, I'm not impressed with the Arizona offense. I know QB he's a player, but the offensive line in the run game is what concerns me. And I don't think that Arizona is going to be able to stop Kansas State and Avery Johnson. I think we're going to let him throw the ball a little bit more in this game because Arizona will be aggressive on defense. It's a ratty line. The public is all over Arizona +7. So much money is pouring into this. That line is not moving at all. That's a rat line. Kansas State, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but Kansas State's going to cover. This is probably going to win by 10, 13, somewhere in that range. Now, I'm not just saying that I'm backing it because I'm trying to fade the public. That's not the case. I just really don't like the offensive line at Arizona. I don't like the running game, and I think that Kansas State, who's been pretty bad so far in the secondary, they'll dial it in this week and do enough to find a way to cover. Brandie, tell me why I'm wrong. You're the one that went 30-20 over the first 2 weeks.
I don't totally hate it. So I'll put that out there. I did. So he texted me before. I think you texted me this last night, and I was like, I need you to sell me on it. And so you might have sold me a little bit on that with it being almost like a fade the public type of play, because I do like Noah Fafita. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks, but they haven't been tested yet. And both teams they've played, he's thrown an interception in. And then the offensive line has allowed 2 sacks through 2 games. So I can kind of see where you're coming from with that. Their first true test is going to be on the road. And it's just like a weird, weeknight game.
Friday night game,
yeah. And I actually do have like a blind strategy that I like to use when it comes to weekday games, and that's always take the underdog. But there are actually like a decent amount of weekday games this week that we're actually picking, and usually it's only like 1 or 2 weekday games, and I think there's 3 this week, and so I'm not quite sure if I want to pick underdogs in all 3. I'm definitely obviously picking Texas State. But I don't hate it. I'm not sold on Avery Johnson.
I'm not either. I expect to see a jump at some point this year.
Yeah, I honestly think Tulane should have won that game on Saturday. I watched the entire game. They had multiple opportunities to win that game. Not going to talk about the officiating because Tulane still covered, but but I don't totally hate it. They're going to be at home, and Kansas State. It's so weird because they won that game, but I feel like they need a game to really spark them, because I don't think that Tulane game really lit a fire under their fan base to be excited about the season per se. Because Tulane is yes, they've been known to be a good G5 team here lately, but they're still under a coach that just got there this year because their coach left. So I don't know. I don't hate it actually. I'm not sure what I'm gonna pick on that game. I'm gonna pick 'em league. I'm not straight up fading you. I just haven't made a decision on that game yet, and I don't hate it. And I think that I'm always behind fading the public too. So.
Well, I feel so bad because this whole sickness thing hit me in the middle of yesterday evening, and I was like, I saw your message today, and I was just like, oh crap, she's gonna be like, he's just saying shit. He has no reason why he's taking Kansas State, and I was like, oh my god.
It took him 24 hours to respond, and I was like, sell me on the game.
I sat in the dark all day. Any exposure to light or anything was just making my head spin, my eyes water, and I was just like, this is awful. And so most of my picks came through today's study and getting into it a little bit today. But Kansas State -7, we're locking that bad boy in. We'll see what happens there. We'll get into it a little bit more because I owe that to you after disappearing on you for a little while. Now, your fourth play is a play that I'm very interested to hear you talk about, mostly because a lot of other people are taking the opposite side. But tell us about that one.
I'm assuming this is Colorado -7.5 that you're referring to.
Of course.
And I know that that's going to be a popular team this week to bet against. I did have Nebraska last week in Pick'em, and they in Colorado also didn't look horrible week 1, but they didn't look great either. I understand that they're not a good football team. I understand that there's a lot of bad press that is coming off of that game and is being put on the family that's kind of running that program right now. Colorado State is bad. This is a bad football team. The reason why Nebraska was able to get after Colorado is because they were able to expose their offensive line, because their offensive line is not good. North Dakota State has a better defensive line than Colorado State.
You're
And
true.
North Dakota State was also able to get after Colorado's offensive line. I do not think Colorado State has what it takes to be able to get after that offensive line in this game. And yes, I know what happened last year in the game between these two teams. Yes, I know that this game is at Colorado State, and that's the basically bragging rights for the next 5 years between these two teams. They won't play until then. But I don't know. I like this one because I know everybody else is on the other side of it. Colorado State lost their two best offensive linemen that they had on their team last year. So if you look at the game last year, this year, I think they lost two of their key players that they had on the offensive line. And I just don't think that they're going to be able to expose the weaknesses on offense that other teams that Colorado has played have been able to expose. That's really what this play comes down to for me. And I also think that Deion Sanders is in a spot where he has to win this game. It feels like one of those must-win pivotal moments from like a coaching standpoint, because this game is really important to Colorado as a university. And with all of the press that's happened this week and whatnot, I just feel like this is a game that Deion, Shedeur, Travis Hunter, all the superstars and people that are always talked about when it comes to Colorado, this feels like a game that they are going to want to win. And they want people to stop talking about them, I think, like in a negative light. Like, everybody says like all press is good press. And I think that they probably do believe that. But I also think right now that they're going to start feeling the pressure. There has been like conversations of like Shedeur and Travis Hunter are going to shut it down for the season, like that type of thing. There's been like rumors swirling about that. I don't think that that's happening. So yeah, I'm hoping Hayden is also, that's their running back. I think he's actually going to be the difference maker in this game, not Shedeur, not Travis Hunter. To me, it's Hayden. If he can get the ground game going, which I think that he can, then I think that they win this game by around 10 points. So I like the 7.5.
I had to hear your thoughts on it. I would not touch Colorado State plus 7.5 with the 10-foot pole this week. There are a lot of people that are doing so. That line has been bet down. I just don't understand it. Star wide receiver Torrey Horton is banged up. Go look at what he's done through the first two games, and it's nothing compared to his year last year. But most important thing I thought you said was like, this is like a back against the wall moment for Deion, Shedeur, that regime at Colorado. You can't lose this game. And I think that if you're up by, 3, 4 points, 5 points, 6 points, whatever, late in the game, they're going to be looking for another score. They're trying to send a message. In my opinion, like you said, there's a lot of things going on about that program right now. Some justified, some probably unjustified, but at the same time, it's like they've still got to line up and go play. And if they want to quiet the noise and quiet all the talking, and they're the ones to go do so. I wouldn't touch Colorado State. If I was going to bet a side on that game, I'm taking Colorado. I think I kind of feel about that one the way you feel about K-State. It's like I might do it. I'm going to look at it just a touch more. Yeah. I thought you had great reasoning.
Yeah, and also Norvell is one of those coaches who, that this is very common in like the coaching world. There's guys who just have this stigma of like, okay, they're out there and they can easily win this game, but they're playing not to lose. Like that's the type of coaching kind of enigma that Norvell has around him.
Yeah.
And so I'm just not a big fan of his.
He spent some time in Austin, I believe, under Charlie Strong. Not my favorite guy either. Don't have like major qualms with him or anything. I just wouldn't necessarily want him being a football coach at my program. I think that they're better out there. I will go to my fourth play. Going back to another team that was in the card last week, but once again, not taking the team or fading them. We're rolling with the under 54 in Boston College and Missouri. Missouri hurt my feelings big time last week with the very, 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 very late cover. Running the score up on poor Buffalo. That was rude. But I understand why they're doing it right now. They are trying to get something clicking on offense. They don't look good. They can't connect on a deep pass, which years prior, it was very easy for them to do with Luther Burden. Theo Weiss it seems like he's kind of taken over the top wide receiver spot for the moment until things get clicking with Luther. I'm just not impressed with their offense. 17 offensive penalties through the first 2 weeks. I just think that they won't convert enough, possessions into touchdowns. I think they'll move the football because they're good, but Boston College is going to be stingy. They're not going to concede anything. This is a huge moment for their program to go into on the road at an SEC school ranked in the top 10, who has really high expectations, and they've got a great run game themselves. And so Missouri, who's played really, really good defense, hasn't conceded a single point through 2 weeks, but Boston College will score. Castellanos has been playing really well as a dual threat quarterback. They're going to move the ball. They're going to score. But I think that with that ground game and them trying to keep Missouri's offense off, they'll run a lot of clock. So 54, I mean, in the college world, that's a very easy number to get to with all of the different offensive schemes and coaches. And you're talking about Missouri, with Bird and Weiss, Cook, like they could easily, score 40 themselves almost any given game. But I don't know. I think we'll see a lot of clock running. I'm not impressed with Missouri's offense yet. I think penalties and lack of deep threat. Maybe Boston College kind of comes up and plays in a box and forces Missouri to try to go over the top. I just don't think Missouri runs the ball particularly well against Boston College. I think Boston College will move it enough on the ground to keep that clock ticking. I see and that line is huge too, but I'm not going back.
Long.
I'm not going back on that to Missouri. I'm not riding that roller coaster again. They made me mad last week. I do like Boston College plus 16.5. That's a pretty big spread for a team that's playing good football like they are. But at the same time, they beat a dead Florida State. They were awful. I don't know. Do you think there's a chance that they cover, or do you like the over-under or the under rather?
I like the under, and I like Boston College plus 16.5. I think Boston College is going to want to control the clock, kind of like what you had already said. That makes sense to me. I like that. Also, just like this is our first under of the season. And I don't know if people know this, but I love unders more than overs, which is very odd because people like overs a lot. But I like to say if you bet an under, your bet is always winning until it isn't, whereas your over bet is always losing until it isn't. So unders are like my favorite little secret thing that I like to bet, but don't necessarily give out as much because people don't really like betting unders. But this feels like a lot of points in a game that it just doesn't make sense. Like you said, Missouri's offense hasn't been like super electric this season. And Boston College, they ran all over Florida State, but I think Missouri has a better defense than
Absolutely.
Florida State's. Yeah. So I absolutely could see this being like a very low scoring game. And I could see it being like a points or a premium type of game too, depending on like how the first half goes. So I like it. I might have to lock in until I think that might be my favorite pick of yours so far that you've given out this week.
I appreciate that. I will say as well, and I know that I've got 2 overs on my card compared to the 1 under for our first couple of shows. I am an under guy, much more so than the over. Especially when you're talking about the hardwood, I'm all about unders. I'll just say that. I've got a few really dorky under jokes that I'll share with you much later down the road. But I'll say that I think it's my favorite play. I'm really confident in the Texas Tech and North Texas just having a shootout. But I really like this just because I think both teams, Missouri can't lose that game. You know what I mean? Like they want to make the playoffs. So I think that if it gets to a point in the second half where they're winning a game 17-14 or 17-10, they themselves might be willing to, let an extra 5 to 10 seconds bleed on the play clock per snap. But we'll see. They burned me last week, and it didn't feel good. So I'll still remember that. Coach Drink, if you punch one in to hit like the 57, 58 total with like 12 seconds, I'm gonna be in a Missouri game on the what is that, the 5th, and I will be rooting my ass off for the Aggies, buddy. Okay, don't blow it.
Look, this is his week to redeem himself with you.
Yeah, there you go. Just run that clock, buddy. It will be good. But
right.
All right. We've got 1 pick apiece left. Who you got, Brandie?
All right, heading back to the Big 12. BYU. This at BYU minus 10.5, and this is a full fade of Wyoming. This is not a play on BYU. I did have BYU plus 10.5 last week in the Pick'em League, and they won outright against SMU in the weeknight game. And some people may see this line and be like, oh my gosh, this is a massive overreaction. BYU's in a perfect letdown spot from going on the road and winning as double-digit underdogs, getting ready for conference play. I don't really care. Wyoming is like one of the worst, like I mentioned earlier, one of the worst defenses or offenses in FBS. And BYU has a pretty decent defense. They had a decent secondary, and their quarterback kind of was like a little hit or miss, especially towards the end of the game against SMU. But their defense really is like what helped them solidify that win against SMU. And so, yeah, so I don't know what happened to Wyoming's defense, though, but not only is their offense bad, but their defense is bad. And it's so weird because last year they actually had like a pretty decent defense for Mountain West Conference defenses. They returned 9 starters, and it looks like their defense has completely regressed too. So this is me just like fully fading Wyoming, a team that I think they lost outright to Idaho too on Saturday. They were like 7-point favorites or something like that. So I'm just full fading Wyoming. And hoping that their quarterback continues having like a 40% completion rate, which is what he's at right now. So rough. I like, and this is a night game on the road, and I think it's kind of technically considered a little bit of a rivalry game for them. So it is a little scary because BYU's in a letdown spot, night game on the road at Wyoming. I don't really care. They're so bad, and I don't think that there's anything that they can do to be able to turn their season around. And I think 10.5, even on the road, even for a team like BYU that's not super great, I like it. I don't know if this was like 14 or 21, like I wouldn't touch it. But to me, 10.5 kind of feels right, and I kind of feel like they're even giving us like a little bit of a tiny gift here. So hopefully, I don't regret saying that. But
no, I mean a full fade of Wyoming, I think is something that people should maybe look into every week. So far, we'll see, but until Vegas adjusts, they've massively misinterpreted their first 2 lines. +7 at Arizona State, and they got shithoused. And then last week you lose to FCS Idaho, who's a good team. Like, let's be real, they're a good team, but Wyoming shouldn't be losing to them. Let's be real. I mean, I would almost take anybody versus Wyoming right now. So I love it. I think that there's an extra day of rest in there, right? I believe BYU and SMU played on Friday. That could help. That's another day of scouting, another day of prep. Could go a long ways. And then at some point, it's like kind of like I referenced with Florida State earlier, now they're off a bye week, so a little bit different scenario. But if they go in there early and BYU punches them in the mouth, I wouldn't be surprised to see Wyoming kind of fold and that one get really, really, really ugly. But I like it. I'm a fan of that play. I will personally be telling that. I think BYU runs through the old Cowboys, but it's kind of crazy. I did not expect Wyoming to look this bad. I did not. I've been a fan of that program the last couple of years with Coach Craig, and yikes, they've fallen off the face of the earth.
I think they're averaging like 10 points per game, or it's really bad.
Well, when your quarterback has a 40% completion percentage, you're probably lucky to score at all. But
sacked 7 times to the first 2 weeks too.
Whew, that's rough.
It's just really bad on offense, and their defense is usually what like helps keep them in games, and their defense doesn't look that great this year. So.
And then the last game, I'm going to be honest, the last card on my sheet right now, I've got something else written down than what I told you earlier, but I think I am going to pivot back. I can't trust Oklahoma right now. The offense is awful.
Break it.
I'm rolling with Tulane. Now, here's the thing. What scares me about Tulane in the 13 points is that they lost a pretty heartbreaker to Kansas State. Like, let's be real. Probably should have won that game. A very physical game. You play with Kansas State, you're going to have to get dirty a little bit. So Oklahoma's defense is still really, really good. Tulane probably finds a way to score a few points. I'm hoping that they can hit like 17 because I just don't think Oklahoma's really capable of scoring 30 on very many teams right now. I know they scored 40 on Temple. Temple turned the ball over like 3 or 4 times in the first half in their own territory. OU had fields that were like 30 yards to go score, and Temple stinks. So Oklahoma looked so incredibly bad against Houston last week on offense. I personally was torn. I didn't know if I wanted Oklahoma to lose that game because I want them to be as highly ranked as possible before we play them. Just kind of always, I want that game to mean something. But at the same time, I was like, these guys stink so bad right now on offense. They don't deserve to win this game. And it's just as a fan of football, I mean, they were awful. Jackson Arnold, the offensive line, Now, I will say this, Oklahoma fans, if you're watching, I keep it real with y'all. You've lost a ton of receivers. Y'all, I feel bad for you. Never wish that on anyone. I want to say you have 5 or 6 of your top 7 or 8 on the wide receivers on the depth chart who have been out or missed time, or a couple of them are out for the year now. So I do feel bad about that. But at the same time, man, that offense is a shell of itself schematically, from Jeff Lebby to now Seth Luttrell. And I'm just curious, like, I just can't see them scoring the points. I just don't. 13, if Tulane can go in there and score 14 to 17, I just don't see Oklahoma scoring 30 against a feisty Tulane bunch, unless Tulane turns the ball over and Oklahoma's deep. I'm telling you, Oklahoma's defense is their best offense right now. They turn the ball over, they set them up, they've got a good field goal kicker. They very easily could have lost that game to Houston, but the defense continued to step up. Long story short, I'm rolling with Tulane. It's a lot of points for an offense as bad as Oklahoma's right now. I'll tell you about my lean in a second that I chose that game over. But what do you think about Tulane and Oklahoma in that 13-point spread?
I like it, and Tulane knows how to move the ball really well, so I'm interested to see how that matches up with a good defense like what Oklahoma has. Venables, great defensive mind. So,
yep.
Jackson Arnold looked bad. He looked very bad, and Tulane doesn't have just they gave up a lot of points to Kansas State, but their defense really isn't that bad. I kind of think the reason why that game was as high scoring as it was is because the just two offenses duking it out really is what was going on. And it wasn't because of poor defenses necessarily. So I like it. And I love Tulane's head coach. I love John Summerall, and he has experience going on the road and winning games he shouldn't win. He hasn't had that chance yet at Tulane, but he did that when he was the head coach at Troy. So I like him. He is an up and coming coach, and he has a lot to prove, and he wants to prove it. And I think he's going to be pissed off after the game from Saturday. And I think Oklahoma is in a ripe spot to have more things be exposed, similar to the team that I cheer for. So, I don't know if they can, piece it enough together on offense to be able to cover a long spread against a really good team that, even though they lost on Saturday, they still are vying for a playoff spot, that G5 spot. Like Tulane and Boise State, both of those teams, they played really tough against good opponents. And while they lost, it was still within one touchdown I think it was within one score. And that the playoff committee cares about that when it comes to G5 teams and who they did lose to. And that's a team that if they beat Oklahoma, they could possibly, that could be the win that gets them into the playoff.
In the end, right.
Yeah. So I think Tulane still has something to play for this season. I like it. I'm always down to bet Tulane. So
I like it. Last time Tulane went to Norman, they gave them quite a scare, played a really good ball game up there. And then also, Tennessee comes to town for Oklahoma next week. There's got to be a few eyeballs in that locker room.
Look ahead spot.
Got Josh Heupel, the last national championship winning quarterback for Oklahoma.
Some drama there. Yeah.
And Venables was around the program, I believe, at that time. So I know that Venables is going to have them worried about that game because they could potentially lose that game if they if they don't bring it. You talked about Tulane's defense. They played pretty well last week. They gave up some points there in the second half, but the last touchdown of the game, they didn't concede it. The offense turned the ball over. Kansas State picked the football up and ran 50 yards. And so, it's just it's kind of just a fate of Oklahoma and then trusting Coach Summerall, and just I don't see it out of OU. It almost feels too easy, to be honest. I feel like this could easily be a one-score game. I know that there's a lot of talk in Norman about that game next week with Tennessee and the SEC opener. They've been talking about that one for a long time. Pretty good spot to bet Tulane. I like it. So, do you have any leans or any other plays that almost made the car that you want to reference? Or I just have one. I think you know which one.
The only other lean that I have is a weeknight game, and that's I picked against this team in the Pick'em League and came out on the right side. And I actually am a big proponent of this head coach, and I like him and I like their team, but I like UNLV plus 7.5, not an official play, but I definitely lean there and will likely pick them in our Pick'em League against Kansas on the road. I had Illinois plus 5.5 in the Pick'em League this week. So that was one that that ended up winning. So if you've been keeping up with Kansas football, you know that they're currently renovating their stadium. They're not playing in Lawrence. They play in the Chiefs Stadium. I think it's the Chiefs Stadium. A lot bigger. Not really much of like a home
atmosphere. Yeah, no,
it's just not much of a home atmosphere. And I think UNLV has actually looked really good this year. And like I said, I love picking underdogs in weeknight games. They're just very fun. I like Kansas's offense still this year. I just don't think that they have like the same oomph though on offense that they had last year. There's something that's missing, and I haven't figured out what it is through week 2 yet, but there's something missing that they had last year that they don't have this year. I don't know if that's Daniels not being like 100% maybe. I don't know what it is, but I would say I lean UNLV plus 7.5. It almost made my card. It didn't.
I like it. I'm a huge fan of it. Brendan Marion has a fun offense at UNLV. They're very good at scoring points. They find a way. They whooped Houston earlier, which was funny considering Oklahoma beat them by 5 or 4 points after a late safety. I don't remember what it was. I think that
was 29.5. That spread in that Oklahoma Houston game was 29.5. Yeah. That's how bad Houston looked against UNLV.
Exactly. Yeah, like that's crazy. And UNLV just wiped them out. And I think that your Arrowhead point is really strong. It's not real homey environment for Kansas. They struggled last week really, really badly with Illinois. I mean, they lose that game outright as 5.5-point favorites. I didn't really have Jalen Daniels getting outplayed by Altmaier in that one, but he was rough. Jalen Daniels struggled. I don't know if he watched it. He was really, really bad. There's no other way around that. I don't know if that's related to health. I know there's been a lot of issues running game.
He's had so much injuries like throughout his career. Like you can tell that's kind of what I was getting at when I was like, there's something missing. I don't know if it's what it is. He's not the same that he was last year, at least not through 2 weeks. And that's concerning for a team whose offense really, really relies heavily on him doing well.
Yep. Well, in the last year, they had a backup that was really quality, and so that helped out a ton. And you didn't really feel all those injuries as much. But now it's just Jalen, and they looked really bad. I like that a lot, honestly. That'll probably be more of a lean, or more than a lean for me in the end. It might put a little money on the old running Rebs, but for myself, we talked about this one a little bit. I like Central Florida going into TCU winning that game. It's been labeled as a pick'em. I just not impressed with the TCU offensive line. Not impressed with Josh Hoover. I think KJ is a lot better player than him. When KJ is good, and I think he's in a great system with Malzahn. Obviously, KJ he's done some bonehead things when he was at Arkansas. Okay. I'll never forget where I was when I watched him try to dive from like the 7-yard line against A&M and extend the ball, and that cost him the game in that one. The same day that we lost to Texas Tech in 2022. So I needed Arkansas to get my day back on track. KJ, I'm giving you another chance. I think UCF goes in there. UCF kind of have them as a little bit of a sleeper team in the Big 12. This isn't like a strict fade of TCU or anything. I haven't been impressed with what I saw with them in their Stanford game. I watched that one start to finish. I just wasn't impressed. I'm going with the more fun offense, the better offensive schemer in Malzahn, and then I think he's got a good weapon in KJ to get it done. What do you looked at that one at all? Do you have a side that you like?
A little bit. I do lean your side. I do feel like the line is a little weird. Like we had talked about, we thought maybe UCF should have been more of an underdog, right? Is that kind of? Yeah, so that was a little odd to me in that I definitely lean UCF. I don't know what I'll end up putting in my pick'em league for that game. It is tough sometimes though, because Gus Malzahn in bigger games, which this would be, I would consider a bigger game for him with it being a conference game. He can sometimes be a little shakier on the road. I actually really like UCF's defense this year. Haven't had a ton to go off of, like with what they've played so far this season, but I think defense is a little improved from last year. I'm not a big KJ fan, but I do think that he fits really well into Malzahn's scheme.
That's more of what I should have said. Yeah, that's a great point. A great way to say that.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if he does really well this weekend because of that. Against a team that's like a little bit better than the opponents that they've already played. I don't know. This one's a really hard game, I think. And so to me, this one's really, really tough because I know how Malzahn did last year in conference play. And it's kind of, I don't know. It's just tough for me. And so I'm a big Malzahn fan, but also at the same time, he's kind of past his prime right now. And TCU's coach is a little more in his prime, maybe kind of. I don't know. Last year was a little weird, but there's nothing that TCU has done that's impressed me though, and UCF just hasn't played anybody, and so this is a game that's like, okay, I guess it makes sense. It's a pick'em league. We don't know enough about UCF yet. TCU's just they're just kind of there. There's nothing that's really exciting about them. So yeah, I don't know. If I had to pick right now, I would pick UCF, and I would lean with what you said. I'm not like super convicted there though.
I just didn't like what I saw at TCU versus Stanford. Just as most of it. I mean, obviously, I think it's going to be a better defense in UCF than what Stanford had on the field, and then where Stanford didn't really have playmakers. I think that, like you said, KJ is a good play, potentially good player in the right system, and I think Gus will give him the best shot at succeeding. So we'll see. Once again, guys, we've given out 5 plays each. This last week in the pick'em, Brandie went 15-10 overall. I went 14-11. Brandie's total is 30-20 after back-to-back 15-10 weeks. I am at 22-28. We're working on that. Brandie, tell our guests your 5 plays from week 3 of the college football slate one more time.
Yep, that's Texas State plus 1.5, Memphis team total over 22.5, Florida plus 4.5, Colorado minus 7.5, and BYU minus 10.5.
Y'all heard that? That's lock those in. Brandie is she's gonna win this year. That's just how it goes.
I hope so.
She puts work into this. She knows what she's doing. She understands lines. You guys, we got one guy in here blind tailing. I would almost say that's something you should all do. She knows what she's doing. On my side, we've got Texas Tech and North Texas over 68.5. Give me a shootout, please. South Carolina and the Cox plus 7.5 as LSU comes to town in a huge game Saturday. Kansas State at home. We are absolutely fading the rat line in the public. We're giving up the 7. K-State minus 7. Boston College and Mizzou. Let's see a lot of running the football and clock churning. I got under 54 there. And then we were rolling with Tulane plus 13 and just plus 13 because we don't trust Oklahoma. Guys, real quick before we get out of here, if y'all have any plays that you like or have any plays that you might have questions about, feel free to drop those here. Just have another minute before we're going to let Miss Brandie get out of here. But all right, Brandie. So you said on my side, you probably like the Boston College Mizzou under the most.
Yep.
I will say I really, really, really love Texas State, Memphis team total, and BYU minus 10.5. And it'll be easy for me to tell the Florida pick just because I don't like the Aggies and haven't seen anything out of them. So
I also really thought about your South Carolina pick a little more, and I do like it. I forgot there's bad weather this weekend. That's going to be up there. So I always feel like it happens week 2 or week 3 when there's like always some kind of hurricane happening or tropical storm or whatever that causes really bad weather. And I think that there's, I don't know if that one's on the coast, but there is some other bad weather up there in the Carolinas that's supposed to happen. And so I might end up tailing your South Carolina pick as kind of a lower scoring weather type of game.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd definitely keep an eye on that weather and the overall point total in that one. It's going to be hard for LSU to win that game. I think if it does get kind of gross out there, not saying that they can, but what they would rather do is throw the football. South Carolina can run against what's been a pretty bad LSU defense. They're on the ground so far, at least. But Brandie, thank you again for doing this. Guys, appreciate you all watching. If you're watching on Twitter, please hop onto my profile, follow that link to this channel on YouTube, and subscribe, like the video. We both put in work, put in effort to give you guys winners, even though I did a poor job of that in week 1. We've got you going forward. So go subscribe, go like the video. We've got a lot of shows coming on each week. Brandie is awesome. And so thank you, Brandie. You have anything else for week 3 of the college football slate, ma'am?
No, nothing else. We're both going to get out of here with winning records this week, hopefully.
Just speak it into existence, ma'am. Well, guys, thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoy your college football Thursday through Saturday. And most importantly, let's go Texas State plus 1.5 tomorrow. Let's get off to a hot start this week.